Hi, Jody Cohen. Welcome to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm so excited for our interview today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be in this virtual world. I really like the being able to meet people all over in this platform. It's so fun. Before we dive in, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and your story, how, you're all about essential oils. How did they become a part of your life? Because the story is always so exciting to hear.
Yeah, I think with any wounded healer, right? You kind of figure out how to fix yourself and then try to share that with other people. So I have two children. My oldest was easy, and I thought I was a great mom. So I had another one 22 months later who was not easy.
Mm,
And I read every parenting book, could do everything I could think of, and he still couldn't sit still, couldn't look at my nose, couldn't really contain his energy. And
mhm.
then one day we were at a playground with a bunch of other families, and my friend said, "Oh my gosh, look at how well behaved Max was." And I had that proud parent moment for about, 5 seconds until another mother passed out snacks. I think it was Ritz crackers, and he Jekyll Hyde and kind of ran off, and I had to go
Yeah.
chase him. And my friend said, "Gosh, I've never seen him do that in response to food. My brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turns out he was just allergic to weird foods."
Mm,
So I went, he said, you should look at nutrition. I did. It
right.
changed our life overnight. He went from being out of control to being really calm and focused.
Mm,
I thought I need to learn more. I went back and got a degree in nutritional therapy and started helping other children, and children
mm-hmm.
are wiggly. So I learned some techniques like muscle testing and just
Yeah.
more efficient ways to ascertain what supplements were helpful, which came in quite handy when I hit my first rock bottom.
Number
My
one.
Oh yeah, it's a roller coaster. My then husband needed to be hospitalized for depression,
Hmm.
and once I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, my adrenals completely collapsed.
Oh, yeah.
I had been running a 10-year marathon and it was finally safe to, tap out, which wasn't so convenient because I was suddenly a single mother. My kids were
Mm,
5 and 7. I had a job. I think it was class mom that year. I mean, it was just hard. And I'd get them up, I'd make them breakfast, I'd pack their lunch, I'd drive them to school. And if I did anything other than lie in bed until I had to pick them up again, it was a win,
hmm. Yeah.
which really was not sustainable. And I knew enough about remedies that should be helping me. I was doing everything I could think of, and
Hmm.
nothing was really helping.
Oh, yeah.
And I had actually, Uber volunteer that I had helped a friend with an event, I think a best year. And as a thank you, she came by with a big box of essential oils and said, "These are really going to help you." And I said, "Oh, great. What do I do?" And she said, "No, you're really intuitive. You'll figure it out." So
Hmm.
she left, and I muscle tested the box. Will anything in here help my adrenals? And for those of you who don't know, muscle testing, it's almost like a volume. Like if,
Hmm.
if it's a power, if it's strong, you get kind of a strong answer. And I got a really strong yes. And I felt kind of optimistic for the first time in probably a month. And then I started drilling down to try to ascertain which oil. And it turned out it was 5 of them, which
Hmm.
surprised me because I was used to getting like one, maybe two
Hmm.
remedies. And then I had an idea, oh, I can combine them. I can
Mm.
make this remedy. And I was so new to oils, I didn't I just used a shot glass in my kitchen. And
Love
yeah,
it.
and and was like just testing how many of this, how many of this. And I put it on my low back over my
Hmm.
adrenals, and I felt like myself again. It was the craziest thing,
Wow.
Yeah. And I had this unbelievably productive day. I went running, I went to the supermarket, I made their favorite meal, which was kind of labor inducive. I did the laundry, I put the laundry away, I cleaned the house. And that night, I was suffering from insomnia, wired and
Mm.
tired. I'd get
Yeah.
them to bed and then lie in bed and kind of pray for sleep. And it occurred to me, like, gosh, I wonder if there's anything that can help my pineal gland. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if we can help it release some melatonin. And so I went back down to the box and made my little formula and kind of, put it around my head to get to my pineal gland. and went fast to sleep and like didn't have that like waking up every hour looking at the clock kind of sleep.
Right. That insomnia
Slept.
clock.
Yeah, yeah, to the point where like my then 5-year-old, you know, he used to come in, he was my alarm. So I was thrilled and I thought, this is fantastic. Look at this. So I just kind of kept making up my own remedies.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take long to start feeling like myself again. And my friends who were very compassionate and supportive wanted to know, what did I do right?
Right.
And
What's
so
the magic thing you're doing?
exactly. And a lot of them were practitioners. So I was
Mm-hmm.
sharing my remedies with them, you know, and we know in practice, like there are certain things, if you're low in like vitamin B, that's easy to supplement.
Right.
If you're suffering from anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, that's a lot harder to kind
Mm-hmm.
of get into place. And we can talk about that. That part of that has to do
Yeah,
with getting
that would be
remedies
great.
into the brain.
Yeah. So excited.
Yeah. So anyway, I started just sharing it with them and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this works on everyone. You should do something with this." And at that point, I had more of my capacity, you know, to like function and focus. So I went online thinking, "My goodness, someone must be doing this." And
Mm-hmm.
I was super surprised by two things. One, that no one was kind of looking at oils the way I was, like
Mm-hmm.
balance different organ systems and regions of the brain. And second, that they made it incredibly complicated. Like if I had had my wherewithal and had started with research,
Mm-hmm.
I would have just assumed I was unqualified and I
Thrown out
never
the
would have
box.
tried it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you know, I guess I need to get, you know, 5 more years of education before I can try
Right.
this. So there was at a conference that this was back in 2012 and it was like $200 or something to be a vendor. So I thought,
Mm-hmm.
well, you know, I have a marketing background. Let's just go and road test this, see if this resonates with anyone else. And everyone at the conference, we sold out like that first
Wow.
day. And they were all like, oh my gosh, people are always talking about oils. I've never really known how to approach it, but I love the way you've systematized it based on what I do. You know, I'm looking to
Mm-hmm.
balance the adrenals, I'm looking to balance the liver, the pancreas. So it took off, and, you know, the kids were still little. My husband was actually hospitalized for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do my day job and be a mom during the day. And then once I got them in bed, before I used my magic insomnia formula, I would, you know, fill orders. And I had a background in journalism and I liked to research. So writing blogs was fun.
Yeah.
Just kind of would throw a blog up and fill orders. And pretty soon it got to the point where I had to hire a friend to help me fill orders. And it wasn't an intentional, like, I'm going to grow business. It was more of this is a fun hobby and this seems to be helping people.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of kept growing to the point where, you know, the kids are older, they don't need you as much. And I'm like, oh, I have to, maybe I'll put my energy into this.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it became really obvious that this, you know, time to quit the other job and do this.
Yeah. Make it your priority job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like the company grew from your passion and you were having fun with it, which is the best way to create something, right? When we create that from the fun place and we're like, well, sure, I'll keep doing this because I love doing
Yeah. Well,
it.
and especially, I mean, you know, when you finally connect two dots and you're like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. And you get so excited.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
Totally. The little rockets go off in your brain.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Well, what a wonderful story. I loved all the little pieces that kind of have been coming together to create who you are now, which we're going to find out more about too. And we're going to talk about some things today, your brain, our brains, how essential oils really work on the brain. And then also your new book coming out, which I won't give it away yet, but we're going to talk about your new book and that will be super exciting. We can't get a copy yet, I don't think.
You know, it's so bananas with COVID. All of the US printers have shut down. And so
Oh,
they're printing in China and there's just shipping delays. So I
right.
can give you a email galley, but yeah, we
Right.
don't have an actual
Yeah.
book yet.
Well, I'll wait.
Okay. And it comes out March 16th. So not too
Yay.
far.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, it's right around the corner. Fall's always quick. Okay, so if we can backtrack a little bit about essential oils, I'd love for our listeners, this is kind of like, essential oil 101. Like, what are,
Yeah.
and where do they come from, that type of basics, so we can kind of start melding that aspect for the listeners.
Yeah. I mean, essential oils are basically the concentrated essences of plants.
Mm-hmm.
And one
Easy.
thing that most people don't realize is that most of our pharmaceutical drugs are derived from plants or mimicking plants,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like aspirin is, white willow bark.
Right.
Thallium is valerian root. So we know that plants have medicinal properties. And then when you concentrate them, basically when you steam distill them, so boil them, and then it's the oils that have kind of an important immune function. They help to move fluids through the plant. They're really a very important healing aspect of the plant, but they boil off and then they separate the water and the oil. And so you just have the oil. So it's like a highly concentrated essence, they're more powerful than dried herbs, right? Like we know peppermint tea is really good for digestion. A drop of peppermint oil is like 25 cups of peppermint tea.
That's crazy, isn't it? That it takes so much of a plant, this wonderful plant matter, to make a one tiny drop. That's what I always find fascinating about essential oils. And people sometimes overdo it, right? Because they don't realize the power behind them. So we'll probably talk about that today too.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like they're the essence of the plant and they're super easy to, well, in one aspect, easy to distill.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but it's kind of like, we talk about eating seasonally and organically, right? One thing that I love about oils is they're distilled on the spot. So it's almost like they capture that, like I lived in New York for a while, and the tomatoes on Long Island, like the Hampton tomatoes, there's something that they taste like sunshine. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like certain fruit or vegetables, when you get it in certain areas, or like Italy,
right.
The tomatoes and the basil in Italy, there's nothing
good,
like
right?
it.
Yeah.
And if you can capture that exact moment, which you do when you're distilling it, you capture kind of the life force and the energy of the plant.
Yeah. Does it matter, like say for instance, a plant is harvested in the spring and then you do another harvest in the fall and then distill that? Will there be a difference between those two formulas based on the season?
Yes, the plants, it's kind of like not all apples are the same, right?
Right.
Some are mealy, some are crisper, but yeah, they do vary season to season. The healing properties don't really vary, but like the color sometimes is a little bit different. The smell can be slightly different. Yeah, it's not exactly the same.
That's so cool. I love it. Okay, let's talk. So we have the foundation for the essential oils, and then how do they impact the body? Let's talk about how they work on the brain, because it's an aroma. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Yeah, there's a couple of factors of it, but one thing I really want to stress is it's really hard to get remedies into the brain, right?
Right.
Because your blood-brain barrier protects everything but super small fat-based molecules, which is one reason we know that essential fatty acids are great for the brain. They're great for brain inflammation. I think it's because they can actually get into the brain.
Yeah,
because they're the right size and shape and texture. Yeah. So that said, knowing that they can cross the blood-brain barrier, the olfactory channel, your nose, nose cells are actually brain cells, and your olfactory nerve goes directly into your brain. It's interesting because your brain, is regulating all of your five senses, but only your olfactory nerve, your sense of smell, goes directly to the amygdala. Right. All the other senses go to the thalamus first, and that has to do with keeping you alive, right?
Right.
You're able to smell predator odor or fire. You can smell water. You can smell food. Your nose, follow your nose. It makes a lot of sense. So it's a really powerful channel, and that can actually be used, with super small volatile remedies like essential oils. They get directly into the brain.
Wow, so great. And so it sounds like it's really easy, as opposed to, let's say, like you're saying, like taking a supplement like fish oil, which then has to go through the whole body and it has to be absorbed into the bloodstream and through the digestive system, unless it's liposomal through the fat layer of the mouth. But so an essential oil then can go straight into the system really quickly. So it sounds
yes,
like
and even when you inhale it, to that point, when it's liposomal, it's being uptaken into the blood vessels, right?
Right. Yeah.
So topically applying it, it does the same thing.
So routes that you can use it, it sounds like you can orally, and then you can also topically use the essential oils too.
Yeah, I don't, it's funny, a lot of the big companies are big on like consuming oil, like putting it in capsules.
Right.
To me, that's the least efficient way to use it, because
you have to go through the system.
Well, that, and I think people use too much, so then they need to buy it more quickly.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's far more efficient to just smell, not necessarily diffuse, because then you're, almost overdosing. You have it in the air
Right.
all the time, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That makes total sense. And when you're smelling it, then you're accessing the limbic center, right? So then it's a whole different part of your body that is responding as opposed to when it
exactly.
goes interiorly into the interior of your body.
Yes, yes. And I
Hmm.
mean, don't get me wrong, there are certain oils like oregano and thyme that are fantastic for like
Hmm.
biofilms and parasites if they're working with a practitioner like you.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not something I'm like, don't try this at home, kids.
Right. Yeah. Don't start taking oregano orally without the guide of a
Yeah,
practitioner. Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so what parts of the brain are mainly affected? Like, is it the frontal cortex? Do we have different areas of the brain for different oils?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic question. And, I work a lot with a lot of functional neurologists that are trying
Hmm.
to balance the brain hemispheres and stimulate different regions of the brain. So you can use it. The answer is you can activate all of them. It's
Hmm.
just, it's almost like very selective. So, for example, anything you inhale through your nose goes directly to your frontal cortex. And here's a tip for anxiety and
Hmm.
panic. Overactivation of your right frontal lobe is usually occurring if you're having an anxiety attack or a panic
Yeah.
attack.
Hmm.
I am prone to them. I'm very well versed in this. And so what you can do is activate your left frontal lobe, and then that puts the brain into
Balances
balance.
it. Hmm.
Yeah, and then you're less anxious. So the easiest way to do that is just think of yoga breathing. You're just going to
Oh,
use one
yeah.
finger to plug your right nostril and smell
Hmm.
something through your left nostril.
Right. Yeah. The
And
yoga nidra
yeah,
breathing.
ujjayi breathing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and people have asked, usually it's like the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. But as you know, your
Hmm.
olfactory nerve goes directly to that side of the body. So right nostril, right brain, left nostril, left brain.
Yeah.
So that's just an easy example. I have remedies that kind of help to balance the hypothalamus,
Hmm.
to activate the vagus nerve for the
Right.
stress response, to stimulate the pineal gland to release melatonin. Those are kinds of, I really think, quite honestly, and this I share in the book, but there are 5 kind of imbalances that I see in most people that if you can
Hmm.
return them to balance, it helps most people.
Hmm.
So,
What are those five magic things? Can we
well,
just,
I don't, there are no
we don't have
magic bullets, but
to
yeah.
divulge too
So,
much from the book.
yeah, no, it's the nervous system, like
Hmm.
helping it to shift into the safety gear
Right,
where
into
you
that
can actually.
parasympathetic mode. Hmm.
Exactly. Sleep. If you're not
Yep,
sleeping, it's incredibly hard to heal.
totally.
Drainage. This is one
Yeah,
thing most people don't talk about. They talk about detoxification, which is mobilizing toxins.
right.
And it's easy to mobilize toxins. It's harder to make sure they leave the body
Yeah, and
and
that's the
don't get
key,
reabsorbed.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with biotherapeutic drainage, and it's like if you don't have a way for it to get out of the body, it's going to stay in there. And if you're immobilizing, especially in the fat cells, you want to have a way to get it out, right?
That's the biggest issue actually with essential oils is that it kind of naturally throws you into detoxification. So you start
Mm,
mobilizing toxins. So I'm
hmm.
a big advocate of binders. I
Yeah,
think you have to take binders because what binders, your toxins go from the cell to the lymph to the blood to the liver to the
right.
gallbladder to the gut, hopefully to the toilet, but are often reabsorbed. And so what binders do is they grab it in the gut and pull it out.
Right.
So that otherwise it's kind of like, Sisyphus, you're constantly pushing the rock up the hill. That poor liver
Right.
is detoxifying something and then it gets reabsorbed. So it has to do it again.
Right back into the system. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want to have it recirculate. We want to get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like that then different parts of the brain, which I love that you were talking about, the hypothalamus and the pineal gland can all be affected with essential oils. And it sounds like there's also different ones for different parts of the
Yes.
brain.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it, there's a healthy frequency, of it's almost like a blueprint.
Hmm.
Like the healthy adrenals have a certain blueprint, the healthy pancreas has a certain blueprint.
Right.
I see each organ system as having a very clear blueprint,
Hmm.
and plants and humans are biofamiliar. You can
Right.
almost combine the blueprint of different plants like you were combining colors
Mm,
and match the frequency of a healthy hypothalamus and pineal
right.
gland.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
that's,
love that. That's great.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's a little bit like, if you think of you're teaching a kid to swim, you put those little flotation devices on their arm, right? So
Yeah.
while they're learning, it spots them, it supports them,
Right.
or you have training wheels on the bike. It's
Hmm.
just basically overlaying something that helps. We'll use the adrenals as an example.
Hmm.
It helps the adrenals remember, like, oh, yes, this is balance. This is what I'm like in balance. And just
Hmm.
like riding a bike, it's a weird, complicated combination of you're moving forward, you're balancing, and some kids take 5 seconds, some kids take 5 weeks. It's
Right.
just when your body clicks in and says, like, oh, yeah, I got this.
Yeah. It's like the cog wheel where it's like, moving around and
Yeah,
then finally like it goes into place and then everything starts to turn like the clock, right in sync with
exactly.
the body.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
So it's just a natural way to kind of reboot your system to factory settings. This is what
Right.
it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah, and I love that analysis of the blueprint of the organ because with the plants, because that's, the plants, we've known them forever. They've been around way before us. And
Yes.
they speak to our cells and our DNA in a whole different way than I think a lot of people don't. When you, let's say if you have a cup of tea, right? You don't think about that tea, that medicinal tea is communicating with your cells and sending a specific message. So essential oils do that too, then it sounds like.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And that's why, like, spending time in nature, being in the sun, it's all the same rebalancing energy. It's just different ways to assimilate it.
Right. And depending, I guess, on what type of absorber you are too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, great. Good. So you talked a little bit about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So essential oils can help with both sides of that, correct? They can help charge, if you were in that adrenal fatigue, like you were mentioning earlier, charge the sympathetic system, which some people do need that, correct?
Well, I think of it, I think with the adrenals, they act like adaptogenic herbs. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's ever done the 24-hour cortisol test, it's not
Right.
like you're a flatline cortisol level. Sometimes it
Right.
spikes.
Mm-hmm.
Often, it's supposed to be high in the morning and low in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Often, we have the reverse patterns. We're tired in the morning and spazzy at night. So,
Right.
adaptogenic herbs kind of meet you where you're at, right? They
Mm-hmm.
balance you out. So if you're supposed to be higher, they bring you up. If you're supposed to calm down, they bring you down. So that's how I see oils working with
Mm-hmm.
the adrenal glands.
Mm-hmm.
With the sympathetic nervous system, that I'll explain a little bit more. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
your autonomic nervous system controls your automatic functions,
Mm-hmm.
your breathing, your heart rate, your ability to digest food, your ability to detoxify, all those things. You don't have to think like heartbeat, it just does it automatically.
Right. We don't want to have to think
And
about that stuff.
exactly. And just like a car, there's a gas pedal when you need to speed up and have
Mm-hmm.
those functions work faster when you're in danger. And there's a brake when you get to slow down and feel
Mm-hmm.
safe and calm and connect. So the gas pedal is the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. And it
Mm-hmm.
kicks in, the example they always use is when you're being chased by a tiger. But we
Right.
don't normally see that many tigers, at least in the US these days.
No, no, we don't.
Yeah, so it could be you're driving and someone in the next lane doesn't see you and they're starting to turn into your lane
Oh,
and you have
yeah.
to like honk or brake. Or it could be anticipatory, stress. You got in a fight with your partner, you're worried you might lose your job, if something's going on with your finances. Anything that makes you feel unsafe, including your own thought pattern,
Mm-hmm.
that can trigger your body to switch into this sympathetic drive where
Mm-hmm.
it really keys up your survival. So all of your blood pumps to your arms and your legs so you can flee. Your pupils, the black parts of your eyes, get really big, like
Mm-hmm.
saucers, so that you
Mm-hmm.
can hyper focus on just that next best choice. It's not, you don't, it's not the Chinese restaurant menu where your pages of options. It's like
Right,
this is
totally.
your one option, because if you start thinking about too many things, you could die.
Right. You want
And
the
it
escape route right in front of you, right? Like, there it is.
exactly, exactly. It kind of down regulates everything that's not critical to your immediate survival. So,
Mm-hmm.
being able to digest, absorb, and assimilate your nutrients, not top priority right now. Detoxifying, that can wait. Having a deep conversation with your spouse, not right this minute. You know, immune function kind of gets
Right.
down regulated. So
Mm-hmm.
this is an important survival mechanism that you're supposed to kind of switch into when there's danger and then switch out of when the danger has passed.
Right.
And you switch into the parasympathetic nervous system where you can digest your food, you can detoxify, your immune system turns on, it allows you to anti-inflame. All of the healing functions occur in the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. But sadly, as you can imagine, most of us live most of the time in that sympathetic fight or flight state.
Unfortunately, especially lately this year, right?
Yes. The anticipatory stress is huge. Whenever you don't feel safe, that's where you're hanging out. And so what's interesting is the on-off switch, the toggle between these two systems, is your vagus nerve.
Right.
It's cranial nerve number 10. It is the longest nerve in the body. It starts at the very base of the skull and kind of splits and winds around both sides, and it's closest to the surface behind the earlobe on that mastoid bone. If you're listening and you feel behind your earlobe on that bone, that is, they actually have a surgically implanted device that helps to stimulate the vagus nerve and activate the parasympathetic response. And they do it right there. So that's actually where I have people apply oils,
right?
Because you can turn on your vagus nerve. It winds through your mouth, your lungs, your heart, every organ of digestion. So things like deep breathing exercises, that activates the vagus nerve. Taking probiotics kind of turns on the gut, activates the vagus nerve. Coffee enemas stimulates the gallbladder. There are many ways that you can activate your vagus nerve. Some are easier and more pleasant than others.
Right. Yes. So it sounds like that the key there to toggling between those two, the essential oils are kind of like that little key to help go back and forth between those two.
It's like switching gears on the bike, you're cruising, you're in high gear because you want to go fast. Then you hit, especially in Seattle, crazy steep hill. Right. You might want to downshift because it makes it easier, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what are some of the oils, the essential oils that can be beneficial for going back and forth in between that mode, especially right now where, since COVID has been more part of the planet and people are finding now they might not even be aware. That's what I've been seeing with a lot of patients, is that their stress mechanisms have turned on, they've toggled, and now they're getting more used to it. They don't know how to toggle back.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting. I originally thought it would be like relaxing oils, like lavender and some of the citrus oils. It turns out it's a stimulatory oil. It's almost why that pacemaker device that I mentioned, vagus nerve stimulation, it's been approved by the FDA for epilepsy and depression because it's an electrical charge. So I use a combination of clove, which is super stimulatory and actually has some really powerful detoxifying elements, which we could talk about, and then lime, which has super small molecules. So what people may or may not know is that oils, they're powerful in and of themselves. Everyone knows lavender's great, peppermint's great, but when you combine them, it kind of amplifies and brings out different aspects of it. Like if you've ever gone to a restaurant and there was something on the menu that seemed like it would be a bizarre combination, but somehow it was amazing.
Right.
That's kind of what it does. So those two in combination are really powerful because they help to stimulate the vagus nerve, which shifts it into the parasympathetic state. The other thing they do, one of the other problems, in addition to like external stress, there's internal stress. And one of the big stressors is toxins, especially toxins in the mouth. You not only have like the bacteria from the food and the external environment, you can have metals off-gassing from amalgams. You can have cavitations or root canals kind of under the gums, under the seams, infections. And, they all are draining through your trigeminal nerve along your jaw to kind of that intersection with your vagus nerve. And there's this researcher out of Tufts, Michael Van Eckler, who talks about vagus nerve infection hypothesis. And it's basically this idea that these germs mildly infect the vagus nerve, and then the vagus nerve is sending those cell danger response to the body. When you're sick, you're tired, chronic fatigue. You're in pain. Fibromyalgia. You're sensitive to everything, multiple chemical sensitivity. So the root cause of all of these problems is a super small infection in your vagus nerve. often kind of right behind your earlobe on your mastoid bone. How do you get there? Well, clove oil has been used in dentistry for centuries
Right.
to
Yeah.
help clean out the toxins and move them away. So that is one strategy that we found to be very effective.
That's fascinating. I love that. And that's the same, I have some training in essential oils, but mainly more in herbal medicine. And that's how the plants work too. They have that synergistic, they love to be together with other plants. Of course
Exactly.
yeah, so like they like to be by themselves, but when they are combined together, it's like they're superstars working together in this amazing synergistic way. And then your body has a different message. And so when you, like you were saying, when you're combining the clove and the lime, it's like your body then recognizes a different pattern of communication straight to the brain, straight to the nervous system. And so then there's a different response from the brain, right?
Well, even, you might think of it like colors, right?
Hmm.
Red and blue are beautiful on their own. When you combine them, it makes purple. If you add
Right.
white, it makes lavender. Like purple
Exactly.
is a very different hue that, like it just, it's,
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, you could think of essential oils like on the color spectrum.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about mood, especially we were talking a little bit about stress and anxiety, and
yeah.
I loved how you talked about the right part of the brain and the left part of the brain. Are there specific oils that can be helpful for reducing stress and anxiety?
Absolutely. I mean, the citrus ones are the easiest, and orange actually is the most
Mm.
accessible. It's really
Hmm.
affordable, and kids usually love it.
Yeah.
So anything in that citrus realm, bergamot and neroli are the ones that are commonly
Hmm.
mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, you can do orange, you can do grapefruit. There's a kind of lime called Litsea cubania. There are some companies that combine the citrus blends. Those are really good. But one thing I noticed that, I kind of love to geek out and try to make it more clear, but there is a part of your brain that is kind of anxiety central, and it's
Right.
called the amygdala,
Hmm.
and it's constantly responding to stimuli. And then there's, if you think about a couple, like one is alarmist and one's always like, no, 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 we got this.
The laid back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So your forehead, your frontal cortex is kind of your executive function. So your
Hmm.
amygdala and your frontal cortex are supposed to work collaboratively.
Right.
You might think of it like you're walking in the woods and you think you see a snake, and start to get worried.
Right.
And then your cortex jumps in and says, "Oh, that's a stick. You're good."
It's all
So
good.
yeah, it keeps it in check. But here's
Hmm.
what's interesting.
Hmm.
So, overactivation of the amygdala is anxiety,
Mm.
underactivation of the frontal cortex is depression.
Mm.
So, if you can calm, these two work together, if you can
Yeah.
activate the frontal cortex more, so anything you can do to draw attention to your forehead, either by smelling oils, topically applying them on your forehead,
Hmm.
you know, often if we have a headache, we don't even realize it. We put our hand on our forehead.
Right.
That's because even by touching it, we're drawing the energy there to the
Yeah.
front of the brain where we feel
Hmm.
calmer.
Hmm.
So, the best trick for kind of shifting out of anxiety and depression and into kind of that place of safety is, well, activating your vagus nerve to stimulate the
Right.
parasympathetic response. And then anything you can do to draw energy to your forehead. So,
Hmm.
smelling oils is a great one.
Yeah. And I liked too how you mentioned the Latin name. And so when we didn't really talk about purchasing oils, but do you need to look for a specific, like type of oil based on the Latin name? Or is there more flexibility there for our
You know
listeners
what
that
I
are?
really
Mhm.
think? I think the only thing that really matters is they're organic, because they're
Mm,
highly concentrated. And if they're
right,
not organic, you're concentrating pesticides.
right. You don't want to put that into your system,
Yeah.
especially to the brain.
And those are more expensive. And so a lot of companies try to hide the fact that they're not organic by saying things like you need the Latin name.
Right. That makes total sense. Just jumping back to, I had this thought about the front of the brain. But, Alzheimer's, that's
Yep.
where the front of the brain is most effective. So, using that same area of the brain that you were talking about, will those same essential oils and activating the forehead of the brain stimulate the frontal cortex and help with memory and cognition?
Yeah, they can. I mean, the other things that go into that are blood sugar,
Mm-hmm.
so kind of balancing insulin levels in the brain and then also circulation. And
Mm.
that's one thing that oils are fantastic about, like cypress is the best and black pepper. They
Increasing
help to,
circulation through the body.
well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and if you think about your distal extremities, like your hands, your feet, your brain,
Mm-hmm.
anything you can do, your neck is your really big bottleneck for
Right.
everything,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
funnel.
and there's a lot going on in there that's competing for space. Think
Yeah.
about you're on the airplane and the person in the middle seat is like taking over both armrests.
Right.
So anything you can do to kind of help eliminate stagnation,
Mm-hmm.
improve flow of lymph or
Mm-hmm.
blood or things like that, it doesn't crowd the vagus nerve so much. So it just kind of makes everything work better.
Right. Everybody loves space, especially the body, right?
Yes. Especially
Yeah.
on the airplane. It drives me bananas when people hug their,
Right.
yes,
I've actually been really
rest.
loving traveling now and having the middle seat open. That's
Yeah,
like it should always be like this. Always.
I know. I
Yeah.
know.
But but I know it can't always be like that. But it'll shift. Okay, so can we talk about sleep for a few minutes because
Absolutely.
I know you mentioned it briefly with your own story, and I know a lot of our listeners have dysfunction, problems, issues, whatever you want to say for the word, disturbance in their sleep pattern. And so, how can essential oils reach that part of the body, that nervous system, when they're in that state of new patterning? I guess that's really my question, is how do essential oils break the pattern? Does that make sense?
Completely. And you have to recognize that there's more than one pattern, right? So
Totally.
inability to fall asleep is very different than night waking. And there are different kinds of night waking. So starting with falling asleep, what's going on there? It's your pineal gland, which is called the third eye because it's actually located kind of between your eyes, right in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
the brain. And it
Mm-hmm.
responds to darkness. It responds to light and dark cues. And so obviously with computers and blue lights and all these things, it throws
Right.
it off. And also the fluoride in the water can
Mm,
kind of calcify it a little bit and compromise its function.
yeah.
So anything you can do, if you can reboot the frequency of the pineal gland so it's
Mm-hmm.
healthy and it naturally releases melatonin,
Mm.
that really helps. The other hiccup in this is that melatonin, the sleep hormone, works kind of in parallel tandem to cortisol, the stress
Right.
hormone, which makes sense because if the tiger is chasing you and you fall asleep, you're dead, you know?
Right. Yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah. So the challenge is to naturally trigger the pineal gland to release melatonin, which you can do through a blend that kind of matches the frequency of a healthy pineal gland. And
Mm-hmm.
then that is actually for night anxiety. This used to be my daughter's issue. She was fine during the day and then she'd get crazy OCD and anxious at night. So helping with melatonin
Mm-hmm.
release actually calmed her down. It's a little bit like a teeter totter, right?
Right.
If cortisol is high, it forces melatonin low. If you help boost melatonin back up, it pushes cortisol down. So it allows you to fall asleep. So
Yeah.
that's one part of the puzzle. Then
Right.
night waking, there's either nocturnal hypoglycemia, which means that you wake
Mm-hmm.
up usually around 1 a.m. and you're usually wide awake.
Right.
Like you could go
Bolt
clean the
up.
kitchen, write a
Right.
term
Yeah.
paper. Right. And what's happening is that your blood sugar dips too low. And so your adrenal glands release adrenaline as kind of emergency blood sugar,
Yeah.
but then you're adrenalized. And so if you think about how does blood sugar get out of the cell or the blood and into the cells, it's your pancreas carrying them
Mm-hmm.
there with insulin. So anything you can do to support your pancreas, like rose geranium is a great one.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pancreas blend, but rose geranium works really well. It's great for hot
Mm-hmm.
flashes too. That just smelling it or putting it over your pancreas, which is the left side of your body under your rib or under
Mm-hmm.
your kind of breast strap, that helps just speed up the sugar return to the body. And then if you wake up around 3 a.m. and you're kind of groggy and maybe you need to use the restroom, that's usually a detoxification wake up. That's when your liver and your gallbladder are the busiest. And so
Mm.
you can use an oil to balance those organs. Also, anything you can do, like taking binders before bed,
Right.
so that,
Detoxification
it
through
lessens
the
the
night.
load. Yeah.
Mhm.
Castor oil over the liver and gallbladder.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, and that's so key. I really like what you said about, that detoxification at night because yeah, I always talk to patients about how important it is to sleep, and that is a great way to think about it. It's like, our body is doing so many things and during the day, we don't want to be detoxifying because we have a list of a bazillion other things we want to be doing. And at nighttime, this is a great way for your body to be at rest.
Yes.
And I love how essential oils can help with that detoxification. And key, what you said, Jody, about having that binder, that's so important to having that when you're going and before bed, or having like a little snack to help with the sugar, your hypoglycemic imbalance too can help, right? Okay, let's talk about, I want to make sure we're doing good. Okay, good on time. Can we talk about how essential oils can impact the DNA? So let's go into the cell if we can for a moment. First of all, you talked about them being able to cross the blood-brain barrier. Can they cross the membrane of the cell into the nucleus and the mitochondria, and help impact the cell themselves?
If you think about the cellular membrane is also fat.
Right.
So yes, it can cross.
Mm-hmm.
And someone was saying that like your DNA shifts all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. They thought they had to go to the wizard to get home, but it turned out it was within you.
Right.
So I do think they can influence that, but I don't think it's this crazy magic bullet. I think that positive thoughts can influence it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sunshine can influence it. I think there are a lot of anything you do, yoga, gratitude, forgiveness, all of these things, I think help your DNA. And I don't know that it changes it. I think that, you're constantly shifting and changing. And so it's just kind of lining up with the best version of yourself.
Yeah, that's so key. Yeah, because our body is totally changing. Like, when we woke up this morning, we're totally different how we are right now in our conversation and how we're going to be going to bed. I really like that analogy. And so when we're talking about the impact of essential oils on the cell, it's almost like that we need to be tuning in to what's going on in our inside in that moment in time when we're like deciding like, okay, this oil would be great for me right now because I'm feeling this way.
Yeah, I think it's anything that just helps you return to balance. Like, I mean, the example I use, sometimes you're driving in your car and someone cuts you off in traffic and you're kind of like, whatever, maybe they're in a hurry and it doesn't bother you. And another time, the same exact situation and four-letter words are flying out of your mouth.
Right, the fingers.
Yeah, it's not what's going on. It's kind of your mindset and where you're at. And I think what's really powerful about oils is that they can kind of calm your mindset so that you always show up as that best version of yourself. Like before I go to bed, I kind of look back at the day in reverse and I think about what
the highlight.
Well, what did I really do right? Like what situations, were kind of not ideal, but I like the way I navigated that. And what could I have done better and how would I like to handle that next time? Because sometimes when you're kind of stressed, like you might snap or you don't really show up as your best version of yourself. And I think oils allow you, I think when you shift into that parasympathetic state and you feel safe, it unlocks better problem solving skills and better creativity. So, no one escapes. We all have that moment where we're rushing out the door and our kid or our husband needs something and we're really annoyed. But, some days we just take a moment and we're like, it's okay. I'll still be there on time, or I could be a minute late. Yeah. And you find whatever they need and it's all good, and you still made it on time. And there are other days when, you just lose your cool. And so I think oils kind of set you up for success more often than not.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Hashtag that. Okay, super. So let's shift and talk about your book, because I want to make sure we have a really great amount of time to do that. So your book is coming out in March of 2021.
March 16th, yes.
That's so exciting. That's when my book's coming out too. It must be synchronicity.
Same day?
Well, they don't have the date has not been officially decided yet, but that's the month. Yay. And so the title of the book is Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. Great title. And sounds like, it sounds like the things that we talked about today are going to be some of the things that you're going to have in the book, correct?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic state. We talked about sleep. The three other things I really tried to, frustrates me a little bit when people say like essential oils are this magic bullet. And
Mm.
there are often times when people will say like, I broke my arm, and I'm like, well, then go to the hospital and get it set in a
Right.
cast.
911.
Yeah, and there are things that you can do to kind of improve blood flow and nutrient assimilation so that it heals faster. But I don't, or if you're going bald, that can be other issues. If you
Yeah,
have
sign of
acne,
something else going on.
yeah, and like if you have any
Mhm.
skin eruptions, that's either detox or gut. Like I try to always look at the underlying factors.
Yeah.
And I also started from a place where I thought like, oh, everyone's different, but the reality is I keep seeing these same constellation of symptoms, and I
Mm.
keep noticing that it correlates with 5 underlying things. And that's sleep, kind of making sure your nervous system's in the right gear, and then drainage. We talked about this a little bit. Like everyone talks about detoxification. It's great to drink green juices and start mobilizing toxins, but it's really important to ensure that the toxins leave the body. And
Right.
that's, oils are amazing for opening up lymph flow and making sure that
Hmm.
they help move things along, helping to improve oxygen flow. So they're fabulous for that. The other two things are energy to heal, and that has to do
Hmm.
with stress, and then immune modulation, making
Yeah.
sure that your immune system is turned on so that it's not like chronic infections are festering under the surface, but
Right.
also not overactivated so that you're autoimmune. And oils, that's kind of what everyone thinks of oils for. They're fabulous for their antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal, all of their immune supporting properties.
Hmm.
And then with the energy aspect of it, in addition to kind of supporting the adrenal glands, the adrenals are kind of lower down on the chain of command. The
Yeah.
CEO of the endocrine system is your hypothalamus,
Hmm.
which then
Exactly.
tells your pituitary to tell your adrenals and your other endocrine organs to release certain levels of certain messengers. So either
Right.
hormones, yeah. And then basically your hypothalamus is kind of constantly monitoring how much blood sugar do we have, how much cortisol. And when you reach those sufficient levels, it says, okay, we're good. You can
Right.
stop
Yeah.
production for
Relax.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But your hypothalamus, I mean, it wears so many hats that it can get a little exhausted.
Totally. Yeah. It has
And
always working different things it's transmitting to the body.
right. It can kind of get out of balance, out of the right blueprint, the right frequency. And
Hmm.
so all of a sudden it's telling to, it's being the whipping the horse's back with the adrenals, keep throwing out cortisol when you're actually sufficient. So I found that it's helpful to not only support the adrenal glands, but to reboot the hypothalamus. And you can do that with a blend that kind of matches the healthy frequency of the hypothalamus. So you're hitting it at both angles.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. It's like the name of your company is the Vibrant Blue Oils, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got like the high five vibe.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Okay, so what was the inspiration behind the book? Was it about talking about those five things we just highlighted, or what was it kind of like? You're like, yeah, this would be. I need to get this out there to people.
It was, yeah. I mean, we talked about my first healing moment. My second one was my 12-year-old son Max was killed in a car accident on August
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
27th, 2018, and his sister is still with me. His father, who I wound up not being married to at the time, it wound up in prison for the accident. There were other boys. There were 4 boys in the car. One is still with us. I mean, he's a rock star, that kid. But it, I kind of feel like I took a harder hit than I thought I signed up for. It wasn't on
Yeah.
my wish list, my bucket
Okay.
list. And I learned some crazy things along the way, things that I never would have wanted to learn. But once you kind of know what can help you in your darkest hour of your darkest day, I felt compelled to help other people because
Mm.
truthfully, a lot of like, I didn't know this, the Kubler-Ross model of grief, that's
Hmm.
actually designed to deal with your own death, not other people's deaths, because it
Right.
didn't make sense to me. And I
Yeah.
was like, this is not what I'm going through. And there really wasn't a roadmap. And so I kind of made my own.
Hmm.
And in doing that, I started realizing, like, I work with a lot of practitioners that work with the chronically ill,
Yeah.
those that are really suffering from Lyme or autism or autoimmunity or neurodegenerative diseases. And what I've noticed is that what works for the sickest of the sick also works for the lot less, for the healthy, wealthy mom who's gained 5 pounds and is more tired than she's used to, and, can't remember where she left her keys, or what's that word? It looks like plaid, and it's that warm thing you wear in the winter. Oh, flannel. The people like who I was before I lost my kid, like, I'm mostly good. I could be better, but all the doctors are like, what are you talking about? Your tests are fine. Your labs are great.
Right.
And I just started noticing it became really, really obvious when, when you're in the depths of despair and something pulls you up, you're like, wow, that worked. Keeping that one, what did I do right? And so it was kind of a 1-year journey of like realizing like, okay, what I did today really helped. I need to keep that in high rotation. Or gosh, when I do that, I feel so much worse. And it's almost like I can't even function for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And, I'm so blessed that I have all these practitioners in my life. So I'd be like, why do you think that's helping? Why is that like not helping? And I kind of started realizing it's one of 5 things, and even I would almost consolidate it to one of 3 things, like either your nervous system, you're stuck in sympathetic overdrive, you're not sleeping, or you're not draining, and there are a lot of toxins. Because even inflammation, there's a reason you have inflammation. It's either the toxins aren't draining, or there's stress, and the stress hormones.
Immune reaction.
Yeah. So I kind of realized like, wow, I could save a lot of people a lot of heartache and time if I just put this out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What a powerful story. Thank you for sharing. I know that was challenging for you, time of your life. I can't even imagine what that was like for you to go through.
It's kind of bananas. It's mostly good now, but like, our cleaning lady brought her daughter, and she likes Harry Potter, and my son liked Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And so my daughter was kind gestured. She's like, oh, you can take all of his Harry Potter books. And I had this moment, grief is weird. It hits you when you least expect it, where I'm like, that's all I have left of him. Like, he touched these pages. I can't give them away. So irrational and bananas. But
it's amazing how our brain works, right?
Yeah.
And so the book then part of the book has these keys, it sounds like, to help people that might be in that same space.
Well, the first part of the book really goes into depth, kind of explaining things, because that's one thing I'm surprised. I actually just wrote an article, a very long blog post about what to do when you've had your gallbladder removed, because I can't believe I kept getting these questions, and I was like, looking, there must be a good article I can refer them to.
And there wasn't one.
No,
it's so crazy. It's like the epidemic. Get your gallbladder out. It's like,
I know, and no one tells them to take bile salts. Yeah, it's pretty bananas, but it's that kind of thing where I realize like I'm good at connecting dots, and I get really excited when I figure out, why does this work? Oh, that's so interesting.
Right.
So it was kind of the 5 things that I kept realizing. These, like if you're kind of mainstream, like you're a little anxious, you have trouble sleeping, maybe you wish the scale was lower than it is, it'll help you cross the finish line. Like those 5 things make a huge difference. If you've been chronic Lyme for 5 years, or your kid has autism, it will help. It's like foundational. It'll get you like 50% of the way there.
Yeah. You got to have the foundation to hold everything up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the book, are there formulas or, recipes that people can make on their own?
Yes, I actually, for the first time, also because of COVID, like we have a big international customer base that we can't, like you can't get anything into Australia these days. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to give away the recipes. So yes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's what we do, and we share it to the world, and then, it creates this domino effect, right? Where people can then help everyone in their community heal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know if we can help more people like kind of activate their parasympathetic nervous system so that they can feel safe no matter, what's going on in the world around them, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Maybe we need a parasympathetic planet.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I know. The new planet.
I would love that.
Yeah, me too. That would be great. So to find your book, they can go to your website.
Yeah, you can go, we have a book page. Let me make sure I get this right. Boost the Brain book.
Boost the Brain book on your website.
Yeah, or they can just go to Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essential
And
oils to boost the brain and heal the body.
yay. And they can pre-order there.
They can. Yeah, it's available now. We're number one
Yay.
actually in pre-orders at this point.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Yeah, I know.
awesome. Well, I'm sure the numbers are going to go up after
Oh,
we
I
get
hope
that.
so.
Yeah. Oh, and some before we dive into some other ways that people can find you, I have one more question. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to have the biggest impact on the planet?
I love that question. You know, it's funny. I have a good friend you might know, Dr. Christine Schaffner. She might have gone to
Oh, yeah.
Bastyr with
Uh-huh.
you. Yeah, she has this vision of kind of a natural Mayo clinic, where people
Yeah.
go and have like immersions. And I would find a way to fund that because I think it's a great
Wow.
mission.
Yeah, yeah, I've always had that vision too for on the East Coast. So maybe she can do the West Coast one and I'll do the East
Yeah,
Coast
you
one. We
guys
can
can
come,
collaborate.
yeah,
Yeah.
combine together. Great. I'll give you all the money in the world. That's a wonderful vision.
Yeah. Well, just, because I think my grandpa actually lived to be 96, and he did
Hmm.
yoga every day, and he had a huge garden, a huge rose garden, so he was getting his own essential oil experience.
That's
But
right.
he used to always say your health is everything. And I think he's
Totally.
right.
Yeah.
And even through all of this uncertainty in the world, I'm always so grateful that I'm healthy, that my body feels good. Like that is, something I'm grateful for every moment of every day.
Yeah, me too. That's so true. And I think that, with things how they've been for 2020, in one way, it has opened the eyes of people to re-examine things. What's it like to have time at home with my family? What's it like to make food? What's it like to grow a garden? All those
Yeah.
things and take time for self-care. So I hope that that part stays forever for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so there are so many wonderful ways to find you. So you have Facebook, Vibrant Blue Oils, and Twitter, same thing, the Vibrant Blue Oil. Most of it's all the same, I think.
Yes. The best way, honestly, if people have questions, is just to email me, just info@vibrantblueoils.com.
Okay,
Um,
great, good.
and
Okay,
I'll answer specific questions.
okay,
My team
wonderful. So
will.
if they have questions about specific oils or anything like that.
Yeah. Anything
Okay.
we talked about.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's wonderful. And of course, they can follow you on Instagram and at Vibrant Blue Oils. So you are all over the place.
Yeah, and I do write a new blog every week. So we send out a good content email every week if they're
Oh, that's
interested in that.
great. So sign up for your newsletter and they can do that on
Yes.
the website.
Yeah, on the blog page.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Jody. It's been such a joy to have you on the show today. I feel inspired to break out my essential oils tonight and pick some ones and make a fun formula myself.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.